So with the war going on and everything else going on in the world, we talk a lot about politics. I do a lot of that on this channel, talking about politics. But in this video, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to talk about some spiritual matters, some spiritual messages that we really need to hear at this time with the world in such turmoil. And I'd like to do it using someone I admire greatly, and I've done a number of videos using his material on this channel, with a few comments made by Beck that I think are really worth listening to, and I have something to say about them. Before we get to that, please go ahead and, while we're on the topic of keeping a biblical perspective, keeping a spiritual perspective, one of the other offerings of Israel 365, I talk about Israel 365 a lot. I work for Israel 365. I'm part of the leadership of that organization. But make sure to check out Israel365news.com. If you're looking for a news website out of Israel, written from a biblical faith perspective, Israel365news.com. There are opinion pieces written by both Christians and Jews. It specifically brings together Christian and Jewish voices into the same news website. So this isn't a Jewish website targeting Christians. It's not a Christian website targeting Jews. It is run by Israel 365. We are a Jewish organization, but many of the authors are Christian, and we bring you the news and analysis again with a strong biblical faith perspective. So please go check that out if you're looking for a good news website, Israel 365 News. But let's get to Beck. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you two clips of Glenn, and I'm going to make comments in between them. Okay, so here's the first clip by Glenn. And they're both from the same monologue. It's two parts of the same monologue that he gave. Very important messages. Here we go.
I want you to take a look at the world that we are standing in right now. A war with Iran that has already drawn in the United States and Israel and starting to separate people. Oil routes are threatened, missiles crossing borders, regional powers trembling, the Vatican pleading for bombs to stop. There is a description of these times at the end of the Bible. It's wars and rumors of wars. And that's the way everything kind of feels right now. You might have heard your father, your grandfather say, there are no atheists in a foxhole. The prospect of war, even one across the world, makes people reach for ancient stories and holy books, whether you're religious or not. It happens. And there is something unsettling that is going on. And something about this war in particular that makes us think about the ancient world and the beginning of everything, but also the end of everything. Whether that's nuclear war or the apocalypse, things that none of us want to think about. We don't want to think about those things. Christians believe that upheaval, apostasy, calamity, a moral collapse are signs of the end. But we don't know when that end is. This has happened over and over again all throughout history. Some Jews look at Israel restored in their land, surrounded by enemies, and asking whether, is history moving to the place where the Messiah, as promised to the Jews, is coming? Muslims, especially with the Shia eschatology, they hear this language of oppression and chaos and deception and war and ask whether, is Trump the Dajjal? Is he the Antichrist? They're actually saying that in parts of the Middle East. He might be the Antichrist. Is the Mahdi coming? And their own tradition speaks of widespread injustice and the Mahdi being revealed. Jesus comes back, but not as Jesus, as, anyway, the deceiver falling, the great Satan falling, and history rushing towards a reckoning. So let me talk to you about what's happening here. What do you see happening? The world's great faiths are not suddenly agreeing on every doctrine. They're doing something more haunting than that. They are all staring at the same storm, each from a different tower, each from a different text, each with a different vocabulary, but they're all looking at the horizon and saying in one form or another, this may not be ordinary. Civilizations don't merely collapse from bad economics or failed diplomacy. Sometimes they do. They collapse when they lose any sense that eternity has a claim on them. When nothing is sacred and everything becomes negotiable, and we have been here in the last 25 years. Marriage is negotiable. Truth is negotiable. Whose truth? What truth? Your truth. Children become negotiable. They're not your children. They belong to somebody else, the school, the state. We can do whatever we want because they're not underage, really. We can adjust their body. How do you know what sex is? Justice is negotiable. Even human life is negotiable. And once people have lost the permanent, they become the perfect prey for the intermediate. And that's where we are right now. And believe.
Okay, so I want to address this from a Jewish faith perspective. First of all, he talks about how this war feels different and that all the different faiths on earth right now are looking at it. The Jews are looking at it certainly through a spiritual lens. We have been since October 7th. The Muslims certainly are. Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th for religious reasons. They say that. They named the war after the Temple Mount, after Al-Aqsa. The Iranian regime certainly, as he pointed out there, are trying to bring the Mahdi and bring apocalypse to the world to summon their Messiah figure. We feel that something different is going on. And what's more, in our political discourse, as I've pointed out in other videos on this channel, faith issues have become part of the political discourse. Christians who are still holding fast to replacement theology are attacking Christian Zionists who are, for their support of Israel. There's all kinds of spiritual matters that have come into the politics. Let me put it a simpler way. The war in Vietnam, the Korean War, World War II, World War I, these were brutal wars, but they weren't about religion. They weren't faith wars. The war that we're in now, this war with Iran, this is a religious war. The other side certainly knows it. We need to recognize it too. Israelis, many Israelis, especially younger Israelis, Israel is the younger you go, the more spiritually committed Israelis are. The younger generation is very spiritually plugged in. And we definitely recognize that there's something different about this war, something big, something end times feeling about it. I want to share with you a text. This is a text, an ancient text. It's from a book. I think I discussed it in another video, maybe on the Israel 365 channel. I don't remember. It's from a book called the Psikta Rabbati. Psikta Rabbati is a book of Midrash, an ancient rabbinic text. This book was compiled in the 6th or 7th century, around that era, but it was compiled then. Many of the teachings in it are acknowledged to be from a much, much earlier time that were passed down, and some of them are recorded in other versions elsewhere. But I want to read you one passage that I came across many years ago, and it's a passage about the end times. And I'm going to read it to you in Hebrew and translate it into English, because I know I have some Jewish listeners, Jewish viewers who will appreciate the Hebrew, but it's also, I don't have it in translation. So here's what it says. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbi Yitzchak said, Shana shemelech HaMashiach nigla, in the year where the King Messiah is revealed. And when you're talking about a midrashic text and it says something specific like the year, it could mean the era or like the more immediate time period. The year that the King Messiah is revealed, Kol malchei ha'umot ha'olam mitgarim zeh b'zeh. All the kings, all the governments, all the kings of the nations of the world will be struggling with each other. They'll be fighting. And we currently have wars going, multiple major wars going on in the world. But look at this line. Melech Paras mitgareh b'melech Arabia. The king of Persia will attack the king of Arabia. When has this happened? Since the 7th century, since this was put down. The king of Persia, Persia is Iran. Arabia, obviously, the Arab countries are all being attacked by Persia. Could be Saudi Arabia is the biggest of them. That's Arabia. But all the Arabian countries are being attacked. The Arabian states are being attacked by Persia. So it says that. But it goes further. V'holech melech Arabia le'edom litol etza mehem. And what does the king of Arabia do? He goes to Edom. Now, Edom, in rabbinic text, refers to, whereas the rabbis use the name Edom, there's no Edomites, even in the time they were writing this, there was no one who identified themselves as Edom. They use the name Edom, or Edom in Hebrew, to refer to the West, to Christendom, to Rome, which eventually became the Christian world. That's the term they use. Okay, and this is just a kind of a term of art in Midrashic text, that Edom refers to the West or Christendom. Most powerful Western nation, of course, is America. And the Arab states are all seeking help and seeking leadership under the umbrella of American leadership right now in this war. It's literally what it says here. V'chozer melech paras u'machriv et kol ha'olam kulo. Chozer often means to make an effort, to continue. The king of Persia is trying to destroy the entire world. That's what it says here. V'chol umot ha'olam mitrashim u'miba'alim, and all the nations of the world are raising a tumult, and they're confused. And that's what Glenn was talking about there, that there's a lot of confusion in our society today, and there's a lot of tumult, confusion at all levels. And they're falling on their faces. They don't know what to do with themselves. Everyone's in a state of confusion. Look at the way the NATO countries are behaving, and Trump's calling them out for it. Total confusion in the world, political confusion, societal confusion, the confusion that Glenn was talking about. And they'll be seized with pains like the pains of a birthing mother. And Israel is also in a tumult and confused. And they're saying, and Israel is saying, where can we go? Where can we come? And God says to them, Banai al tityaru. God says to Israel, my children, don't be afraid. Higia zman gulatchem. The time of your redemption has arrived. Now, I don't know, let's put it this way. If the Psikta is not talking about this war, then it's talking about another great war between Persia and the Arab nations, which then involves the West on the side of the Arab nations. If it's not talking about this war, is it talking about another massive war exactly like this one? We're living in remarkable times. So when Glenn talks about different faiths looking at this war through a faith perspective, yes, we all are. We certainly are. And we know that something big is happening here because this is a war over faith. I talk about like the encroachment of Sharia law and Islam in the West a lot on this channel. It concerns me a lot. Glenn talks about it a lot also. That's one of the things I like about what he's been talking about these last few years. Because we're in the midst of a worldwide war against Islam and their partners, the Marxist atheists. We're in a war against them. We've been in a war against them for a long time, and the war plays out in all kinds of different ways. And right now, this conflict that's happening is the explosion of all of that. It's the bubbling to the surface of so many things that were not at the surface yet. And we all know it. We all feel it. You see, so in other words, what's going on between Iran and the United States, and what's going on in the streets of Europe, and what's going on, in the struggle against Sharia in America and in other parts of the world. This is all interconnected. And the persecution of Christians by Muslims in Africa, like you see the Christian nations now aligning more with Israel because they recognize where we are. We are in a worldwide, it's not just a war. This isn't just politics. There's something much, much deeper going on. All right, let's see the next clip from Glenn. So this next clip is from the end of this same monologue.
Talk to you about today. I'm not going to make a prediction or lay out a timeline or a headline. I today want to pass a warning I feel more than compelled to share with you. Time matters right now in a way that is hard to explain with any kind of chart or data. The world is not falling apart randomly. There is a direction to it, and there is awareness beyond what we can see. I feel compelled to tell you none of this is a surprise to God. None of this is catching him off guard. None of this is outside of his view, and neither are you. I believe deeply that people are being called quietly, individually, across different faiths, countries, different lives, not all with the same words, but with the same pull. You might feel it yourself, a pull to get closer to him, to simplify, to spit yourself out of the system, to return to the basics of how we are supposed to live. And I don't mean go live in a log cabin. I mean the way you're supposed to live in your own home. Because the times ahead are not going to be easy. There is going to be confusion. If you think you're confused now, you haven't seen anything. And there are going to be voices, loud, convincing voices that will try to pull you off course. And some will sound really righteous. Some you will agree, listen to everything, but mainly listen to him. Some will sound like they're right for a while. 1% off course is going to make a big difference. They will sound urgent, and they will sound like they have all the answers. They don't. I don't. I was talking with my staff this morning about the state of America, and we talked about how it reminds us of the battles in the Bible where the enemy is just consumed with the spirit of confusion, like a fog over their camp. And they just start killing their brothers and their allies instead of who they're supposed to be fighting. They just all turn on each other. That fog has clearly fallen over America. And we're watching right now the left rip itself apart for years, and it gobble other parts of the left. And now the right is joining in. But beyond politics, we're ripping each other apart in our own families, in our marriages. The spirit of confusion has us attacking the people we're supposed to be fighting with and not against. And it is a thick, thick fog. And it's easy to get lost in if you don't have your footing. If you're not grounded in something deeper than what's happening right now, you can and will get lost. Now, let me give you some good news. We make it. We make it. It's going to be fascinating to see how God solves all this, but we make it. However this unfolds, however difficult the road becomes, the story doesn't end in darkness. There is something on the other side that is glorious and worth enduring for, something better than what anyone has ever known. But getting there requires preparation, not just in what you store or plan, but in who you are. One of these days, I want to tell you some things about. I always know when trouble is coming because I come under attack. My family is under attack now like it's never been. I mean, it's been bad in other times, and it's playing on me. You have to get these things cleared up. Your family matters. Your faith matters. Your daily choices matter more than any headline. I told my wife yesterday we have to double our work on feeding the hungry. We have to double our work on telling the truth, leaving your sins, loving your children fiercely, like they're the only thing that matters. Honor your vows. Pray like heaven is real. Read the ancient words again. Stand down from hatred. Step away from the lie that politics will save only what repentance can save. And you know what? I hope I'm wrong. And, if this is not the beginning of some grand chapter, those are still the right things to do. We all need to live our life as if, the life that we live as if the Messiah is near is the life we should live, even if he's not.
Wow. That was powerful. So I want to share you my thoughts on this. I'll share with you my thoughts. First of all, I love when he says there that it's all going to end well. Let's remember, as people of biblical faith, we know that the end of the story is good. How bloody it is on the way to that good end, a lot of that's up to us. But we know the story ends well, and we have to have that faith. And we have to remember that God is in charge. Everything looks chaotic, but God is the God of order. God controls this. And like he said there, none of this is a surprise to God. None of this is outside of his vision, and neither are you. And then his message focuses on you, on the individual, on cleaning up your life, on getting your life together, and recognizing the importance of this moment. I love that line. The life that we lead, if we believe the Messiah is coming, is the life we should be leading every single day. And as I was listening to him, a short prayer that Jews say on one day a year came to mind. We say it numerous times on that day. On Yom Kippur, on the Day of Atonement, which is the holiest day of the year on the Jewish calendar, Yom Kippur, numerous times during that day, we confess our sins. We do what's called vidui in Hebrew. And it's a liturgical confession. We go through this long list of categories of sin. And right after we do that, we say the following words. I'll say it in Hebrew first. Elohai, ad shelo notzarti, eini kedai. Ve'achshav shenotzarti, ki'ilu lo notzarti. What it means is this. It says, exact translation. My God, we're talking to God, my God, until I was created, I was not worthy, meaning was not worthy of being created. But now that I am created, it's as though I haven't been, meaning it's an admission that I'm not fulfilling. It's part of the confession, saying that now that I look at my sins, I'm not living up to what I was created for. But think about the opening of that. My God, until I was created, I wasn't worthy of being created. So what does this mean? So one of the greatest rabbis of the last, I consider him the greatest rabbi of the last 150 years, maybe more, is Rabbi Avraham Yitzchak Abraham Isaac Kook. He was the first chief rabbi of the Jewish settlement in the land of Israel in the modern sense. And he was the chief rabbi of Israel before the state. He died in 1935. And his writings are widely studied. He explains this line as follows. He says, what does this mean? Well, if we're people of faith and we believe that every single thing that God created, he created for a purpose. Everything in the world has a purpose. Well, what does that mean? That means that until I was created, until I entered the world, until I was born, there was no need for me. There was no purpose for me, because if there had been a purpose for me, I would have been created then. But what does that mean? That means that now that I have been created, I was created at a particular time, in a particular place, because I matter. I have a purpose. Because again, if you believe that simple idea in a life of faith, that simple idea that everything that God created, he created because it needs to exist, because it has a purpose. If God didn't need you to exist, he wouldn't have created you. You have no purpose. which means that because the very fact that you are here, the very fact that you were born into this particular monumental, wild time, the fact that you're alive at this time, let's extend that. The fact that you're of whatever age you're of at this time, and think about what that means for different people watching this. You're at different ages. Whatever age you're at, you bring something to the table. The fact that you are alive today with whatever capabilities you have today means that all of that has a divine purpose. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist. Because again, everything that God created, he created for a purpose. And that's what that line really teaches us. It's a call to the individual to recognize that every one of us has a responsibility at a time like this. No one's a spectator. A lot of us feel like spectators. Oh, there's the people fighting the war, there's the politicians, and I'm just watching YouTube videos or reading the paper, following along. No, every single one of us has responsibilities. And society is made up of individuals, of families, of communities. And we must contribute at every level. Every single person, every one of us has a divine purpose. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. And that's what Glenn is calling everyone to, is to recognize that this is not a normal time. This is not a time to just read the paper and talk politics. This is a time to pay close attention to what's happening, to understand the nature of the struggle that we're in, and to seek ways that we can make ourselves better and rise to the moment.